Welcome to Recogs, the show where we learn how the world's best business operators build consumer brands from sourcing to selling. Brought to you by Manufactured. Manufactured is the end-to-end inventory solution for brands. We can help with inventory financing, sourcing, and manufacturing consumer products. We can help with inventory financing, sourcing, and manufacturing consumer products. If you're interested in learning more, check out manufactured.com. Our guest today is Will Nitze, who is the founder and CEO of IQBAR. IQBAR makes plant-based protein bars, hydrogen mixes, and instant coffee for your brain and body. On this episode, we don't talk about marketing or CAC LTV. We talk about distribution channels, when it makes sense to enter a new one, conventional versus natural grocery, how to price your products, what Amazon taught Will the most, and a lot more. This was a really fun conversation with Will around the operation side of building IQBAR. Really hope you enjoyed this one. Without further ado, here's Will. Will, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. I know that you didn't come from a CPG background when you started IQBAR. How did you start, when you did start IQBAR, what was your process in terms of figuring out, building out your supply chain and figuring out which manufacturer, for example, you wanted to use, and how also to think about your inputs too for each of the bars?
An important piece of context is that I came to CPG with like zero experience. Didn't know anyone who started CPG company, let alone a food and bev CPG company, and was truly starting from zero. So the first step was just, can I make a thing? Like, is it even possible to make a thing and for that thing to be good and something people want and economic and at least somewhat economically viable? So step one was just that, and convincing a manufacturer to make something for me, period. So because like you have to sell the manufacturer on taking you on at first, not vice versa, because you're just some guy or gal with an idea and you want the lowest, absolute lowest MOQ and all that, right? You're not an attractive client. The goal is they're betting on you because they like you, the idea, and they think it can grow such that you would become an attractive client. So that was step one. And basically I got linked up with our first co-packer in the Pac Northwest through another bar company who was in Boston. Um and that was their manufacturer, and I was like, hey, can you intro me? And so they introed me, and then I had created early prototypes in my kitchen, but I was like, hey, here's generally what I want to make. Is that feasible? And they're like, well, it needs to run on our equipment. So that was the first learning I had, where it's like, you can't just make something and then it's good and then you can sell it. It also has to be manufacturable. It has to be able to be created at scale on specific types of equipment. Um, and it has to be viable, on a larger stage. So basically, I then took a bunch of work I had done just in my kitchen to their R&D setup, our co-packers R&D setup, and iterated a bunch of times such that the product could be mixed, slabbed, cut, wrapped, etc. And so that was like V1. And the cogs sort of netted out where they netted out. Candidly, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to pick this because it's cheaper and that because it's cheaper. And so I think our earliest cogs per bar was something like $1.25 a bar or something like that. Which maybe sounds good if you're selling it for whatever, $2.49 or $2.99. Maybe that sounds viable. It really isn't. When you bake in everything, logistics, parcel shipping, because we were a D2C business first, and then a D2C plus Amazon business. So we were an e-com business, and so when you factor in all the logistics entailed in that, like, you'll never survive at that level. But that's a start, and then from there, it's sort of like, can you create enough demand to thus create enough volume to then start having some form of leverage with your co-packer to be able to start whittling away at both materials costs as well as labor costs. Um, and we can get into the nitty gritty of that if you like.
Yeah, I would. I love that. I love that. And I just want to say, like, kudos to you because one of the reasons, like, I have a subscription for IQ Bar every month, and one of the reasons why, because I studied like quite a few of the different bars that kind of are in your category, protein bars, um, low carb bars, and I mean what I found part of like what I found, well, first of all, like the taste tastes really great in my opinion, but also like on your pricing side, at least online, like I think it nets out to like $1.50 or like $1.60 a bar, which for that it's pretty impressive because all the other kind of like competitors in your set, what have I felt at least, it's usually like $2 over a bar anywhere, and so I also just am also a big fan of your pricing too, as well from like a consumer standpoint. So yeah, but I guess when you actually did can you talk a little bit about like after you made like your first few prototypes and needed to actually then go to a manufacturer to make sure that this of course the viable product, and then learning that okay it had to run on their facility, what changes specifically you had to make with your product in order for it to be like commercially viable, period?
Bars are, it's funny, like the normal consumer would go and look at a bar on a shelf and think, oh, that's a pretty simple product. It's actually extremely complex. For a variety of reasons. So just to like walk through the basic ones, like first of all, you're dealing with something that has, so like at a high level bar, you need like dry stuff, wet stuff, and sticky stuff. And there's like a zillion permutations of ways that you can mash all that together, right? So the sticky stuff, let's say it's like fiber or honey or glucose syrup or whatever it is that's your adhesion element. And but it could be at room temp, it could be, you could heating it up, you could like there's an insane amount of food science that goes into just the like prep of it, mixing XYZ together, then adding ABC into that, then adding DEF into that. How long are you mixing each time? What happens if you overmix? Or you're spinning oils out of the dough and now it's going to dry up earlier and blah blah blah.
And were you learning this stuff like on the fly, or were you also like having like a food scientist like consulting with you when you were actually when you're actually making like the prototypes?
Yes, I talked to a number of food scientists. So there's like a bunch of different ways you can create products. You can go to a big product creation house and pay them 50 grand a SKU and say, hey, I want this, and this, and I want these nutritional specs, and here's the general taste profile, and can you make this? And they'll say, yeah, give me 50 grand and I'll make it. The problem with that is, let's say you get it back and you kind of like it, but you're like, I want you to tweak this and this, and they tweak it, and then they want you to tweak this and this, and they tweak it. Eventually, they're like, all right, the product's done. Like we're out, and you're like, well, okay, I guess I'll go to market with this. And like the reality is, it takes like 1,000 iterations. And so I've just found you have to kind of develop that know-how and in house and in your own head as a founder of a food and bev company. You will hit a ceiling at some point. Like you just do need certain expertise at some level, but you should pull that expertise in and then absorb it as much as you possibly can so that you get better and level up. And then maybe you hit a new ceiling. And eventually, my opinion is you should know all the food science behind your food and bev product yourself. Um, but yeah, I mean, like examples of things that would be not machinable would be like, let's say you make a product and it's too sticky, and in your kitchen it's fine, and you put it on your stick-free cutting board and try it, tastes good, like, but now on a line, now it's sticking to like the slitting blades, or it's sticking to the conveyor belt and leaving residue, and then that residue is building up. And so okay, now we have to like rework the stickiness. How do you do that? Well, you can have less whatever, honey, fiber syrup, whatever, or you could heat it so it hardens quicker. so it's less wet, so it's sticking to the belt less. So there's just oiliness, stickiness, softness, all have to be dialed in, and temperature all have to be dialed in very specifically, um, such that it can mix, slab on the line, smooth out, cut cleanly, then be firm enough to be able to wrap a wrapper around it. Um, so it was like elements like that you're just kind of micro tweaking.
And got it. And then once it gets to the final product and making sure that that of course that then it can be like commercially viable and actually run the line, and then it can also, of course, as you say, like make sure it doesn't fall apart in the packaging, or packaging can go around it. um can you break down a little bit? I remember that you said that like originally, from the beginning you were thinking it came out to like $1.25 for cogs. I'd imagine this is also like a pretty low order quantity too, but maybe we can break down a little bit in terms of like the cost that you have to think about on the ops side, and in terms of making it, a sustainable business, apart from, the marketing costs and that sort of thing, which probably a lot more people talk about. What's kind of like the breakdown overall in your costs?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, you have to understand what your just high level pricing structure is going to be. Meaning, is it going to be turnkey, which means the co-backer is doing everything, right? They're buying all the materials, they're putting in all the labor, they're doing all the work, and then they just send you a bill per bar or per whatever, per cookie, per drink, per whatever. That's turnkey, which is desirable in many ways, right? It's streamlined. They're doing all the ordering and admin stuff. They're storing it. They're making it. You just get a bill, right? That's nice because it's clean. Um, but until you're really, really big and you can really twist the screws, candidly, on a manufacturing partner, that's going to have two major downsides. Number one, it's not the most cost effective. It's helpful with cash flow, but just in a pure, like, how much am I paying per unit? It's going to be more. And then number two, it's less flexible, which may not matter in normal times, but like take like COVID, when supply chains were an absolute mess, no one could get anything. Turnkey became a massive problem for a lot of people because usually it's more of a just-in-time model. They're ordering everything for that production run, or at most two production runs, then they're making it, and all of a sudden it became you really had to start ordering for 3-4 production runs worth of stuff because you literally couldn't get stuff. And then all these problems would crop up, and you know Janet, in ordering at XYZ co-packer, it just is the case that she's not gonna be super incentivized to solve that problem on your behalf and like turn every stone to figure out a solution to get you XYZ input, pull off whatever miracle that you need to pull off to get that thing to make your product to sell it, to not go out of stock. Like, she's not going to do that. And she shouldn't. She's not incentivized to. You will, you and your team will. So those are kind of like the pluses and minuses of turnkey. The other side is you own your own supply chain, meaning you're buying all your inputs. They're sitting on your balance sheets. You're outlaying all the cash, and you own those inputs. Um, and you can buy a lot more, right? Because you're the one buying it. And so you can have 3-4 production runs worth of stuff because you're the one paying for it. You are directly negotiating with all the suppliers. So you have like total price transparency into everything. You're negotiating directly with him. You're trying to get pricing as low as possible across the board. Uh, and you're solving problems, right, as they come up. Like, you see the problem as it arises, and then you solve it, and you just can get stuff done quicker and easier. So the downside to that is that the co-packer is not incentivized to have low waste, for example, right? Because they didn't buy the inputs. Why would they care about 20% waste? They're not incentivized to, because They didn't buy the inputs. You bought them. The admin downside, right? You have to place a zillion orders. You have to manage all the freight of it coming in. Like that's a whole set of work that you wouldn't have to do in turnkey. Um, so anyway, that's like the high level, like A or B. And we used to be A, and then we moved to B. We moved to owning our own supply chain during COVID. We're always evaluating, like, would we want to go back to turnkey? Do we like having total control? So, I mean, we have that debate annually.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Can you talk a little bit? It makes sense in terms of when you first started out, it using like the turnkey model, just to kind of get off the ground, right? And also at the same time, you then are probably ordering all your inputs, in for multiple runs. You're still kind of doing like maybe a more of like a proof of concept, from there. But talk to me a little bit about that transition from turnkey to actually owning your own supply chain and how that came about. It seems like maybe it came about because of COVID and everything that happened through COVID on the just how it disrupted supply chains globally, and shipping globally. But talking a little bit about when you realize that okay, we need to kind of own our own supply chain.
Yeah, I mean, just it was almost like a survival thing. Like we had to. We just kept running into thing after thing after thing of like we can't get X, we can't get Y.
And is this like inputs, just like different like ingredients, ingredients and inputs? What did you have a hard time sourcing? Um,
Every everything. I
everything.
mean, certainly imported stuff was harder. Um, Domestic stuff was not as hard, but even domestic stuff like almonds, for example, domestic.
Were most of your ingredients international or most domestic?
No, most are domestic, but here's the like the rub is let's say we have 50 inputs that go into all our products. All that it takes for everything to blow up is one of them to not show up. So yes, like the vast majority is domestic, but it just so happened that a whole slew of imported stuff was insanely hard to get. Um, and by the way, we're not the only ones buying any of these things. So any supply that like giant manufacturers were Pepsi, Frito Lay, Mondelez, Hershey, etc., are buying up all the stock of certain things. Um, and then big, like we had a flavor house that just literally couldn't make our flavors. They're like, I think they had a 16-week, might have even been a 20-week lead time at one point. We're like, what do you mean 20 weeks? We need this in like, we need this in 4 weeks. Like, sorry, Coke and Beyond Meat and whatever, like just came in and booked up all of our line time. There's massive labor issues. So they're like, we literally can't make it. Like the plant, XYZ plant's down, and then all of our other customers are placing massive orders. And so it's like, what do you do? What do you do? If you literally can't get an item, what do you do? Um, so, I mean, you do a lot of things. You but you have to be the one doing it is the point, right? Like if that was a turnkey model, co-packer is going to be like, yeah, we can't get this. They came back with a 20-week lead time, and it's like, well, did you try like calling this person and that person and escalating it to here and to like getting this redundancy over here and blah 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 blah. So it was a gnarly 2021 in particular was just a gnarly year for supply chain. I mean, 2021 was bad, but 2020 was bad, but 2021 was like really bad. Um, so, and now we're just kind of like a little gun shy around going back because it's like, I don't know. It's just, it's comforting to know that you're the one doing stuff because you just know it's going to get done.
Totally. And I mean, how also do you think about like how much to order, how much to produce, and kind of because of course you're the ones that are actually doing all the orders. You're ordering the inputs. I'd imagine you're ordering inputs in terms of all right, we can do multiple runs every time we order maybe one one set of these inputs. It's not just for one run. Maybe I'm wrong there, but how does that kind of like go? But how does that kind of go into in terms of how much to actually order and making sure as well that you like you don't have that problem of being sold out, but making sure you're not being maybe sold out for weeks or hopefully not obviously months at a time.
Yeah, I mean, like the cardinal sin, and like I said this on your webinar, is going out of stock. Like that's the cardinal sin of consumer goods. Do everything you can to avoid that. Um, the other cardinal sin is running out of money. So that's the pull, that's the tug on both directions, right? Because you need to outlay a lot more money to buy 3, 4 production runs worth of stuff to make enough stuff to then not go out of stock. So it's like, you're always like sort of seesawing around.
And at the same time, when you buy a lot of stuff, then it's like, okay, then you also have storage fees, which also cost money. So
Yeah, totally. And that's the least of your worries. Like you'll eat those fees to not go out of stock, but it's like, man, the material costs were pretty gnarly for a while there. So I mean, cash conversion cycles are very important for all these reasons, right? If you want to be able to turn every purchase into revenue on the back end as quickly as possible so that you can order more. This is why e-commerce is a good model, right? Because you get paid today. If someone buys something today, you get paid. Well, you get paid whenever Shopify/Amazon remits, which is like bi-weekly or whatever. So it's super quick conversion. Versus say a brick and mortar dominant business where that conversion cycle is much longer. You're getting paid every 30 days, 45 days, maybe even 60 days. Um, it also got kind of gnarly for us when we started having a bigger club business because the sheer volume was so big. It was like we had to come up with $1 million one time to service a Sam's Club PO. We just didn't have the $1 million. Straight up didn't have it. So so it's like um, we got a loan. We got a short-term loan with a good partner and made it happen and paid it off. And it helped that it's Walmart is a credible payer. Um, That's a good PA, if anyone you're gonna rely on to pay you, Walmart's pretty good. So, but yeah, I mean, you got to get creative with financing too.
well, how do you think on the financing side, like when to use debt and when to use cash in your mind? I know that for like that one particular example, like it didn't seem like you had like the $1 million on hand. So, but like when does it as you've like grown, are you like thinking, okay, let's kind of lean a lot more heavily into debt, even if we do have the cash on hand, or kind of how are you thinking about what kind of levers to pull?
No, not now so much. That was just we hit a couple moments where we were like out of cash, and had big orders. And but so we've gotten to a place where we have enough cash. We're cash flow as a business. We're profitable now, um, so we don't bleed any money. It's really just managing cash flow swings, um, and so we don't use debt now, um, especially 'cause it doesn't help that interest rates are so high, so debt got a lot more expensive. But we did certainly we've had a couple of these choice moments where really there was no other option. We figured actually we had a Rite Aid order. This was in 2019 where we also didn't have the money and no bank. Things like Kick Further and Ampla and all these like sort of financing startups that are great and helpful now, like they didn't exist. And no bank's gonna lend you money, right? Like to get a line of credit with a bank, you need two, at least with B of A, we needed two profitable tax returns, which like no CPG startup like ever has. So you're not getting a credit line, period. So either you're raising equity or you're getting a loan creatively. So I literally just called up our biggest investors and I was like, I need 100 grand like tomorrow. Uh, and one of them was like, all right, so like send me your wiring details. Uh, and then it converted and we treated it as a convertible note that we could pay back or could convert, and we just let it convert, and he'll absolutely crush it on that 100K. Um, but like that was huge. We needed that at that moment. So it's really just been a couple moments, but we try not to use debt to that. One exception there is we got an EIDL loan uh for 500K, which was very helpful. At a great rate. I think it was like 3% or something. Um, and like a 10-year payback. So if you can get, again, weird times, right? Those were happening in like COVID, which is a 1 in 100 year event. So how replicatable is that? I don't know. Not very, I guess. But like there are these sort of like opportunities that crop up. There's so many ways to finance now, many of which are expensive, but it is a way to finance. Like Amazon lending will give you money. Shopify lending will give you money. PayPal lending will give you money. Like anyone will give you money. Um, so you can get creative and dig yourself out of a hole.
Yeah, no, that's no, I mean that's a great point. In terms of like certainly like the lending solutions for um you know emerging brands, like it's there's like a lot of stuff out there now that you can do. Like I think that that you don't have to totally rely, for example, on like using equity just to finance your business. There's now like a lot of opportunity for different ways. How also do you think, I mean, obviously you're, in Sam's Club, you're in Costco, you're in like, a number of retailers, but how do you, I guess, evaluate right now in terms of which retailer you should kind of head into or that makes sense at this point for IQ Bar, and think about your overall like new sales channels?
Yeah, we think about this a little bit differently than I think most brands. Like the kind of the standard playbook is go natural and then kind of grow your concentric natural circle and then go conventional and then go club. And we never did that. So part of it was we couldn't get into Whole Foods because our original bars used allulose, which is a banned ingredient. It's kind of everyone kind of agrees it's silly that it's banned. It's they don't like GMOs, and most allulose is GMO, but there's also non-GMO allulose, which we use. So it's like it was always kind of silly, and we don't use it anymore. But we that's always the first one people think of. Oh, are you in Whole Foods? You know, if you're like a better for you product, and we weren't, and so we had to look elsewhere. So our first big retailer was Kroger, and we're still sold in Kroger today. Um, and so we're like, all right, that's what's available to us, and we would want to get there anyway, right? It's bigger, it's the biggest chain. How do we win in Kroger? And then it's just like, okay, look at the set. What are the price points? What price points do we have to get to? How do we frame our products for the Kroger consumer? Yada yada. Um, and then we went into Walmart really early. The Walmart, I think like that we had a sizable online presence, which is super fascinating, by the way. Like you know, 10 years ago, I don't think Walmart's coming to you and saying, "Hey, I saw your Amazon listings. Like, let's chat." That conversation isn't happening 10 years ago, but happened a couple of years ago with us, which is one of the halo effects you can create by building an online business first. It massively helps with brick and mortar on getting new doors. But so then same deal. It's like we got this opportunity with Walmart. We're like, go or no go, and we're like, you gotta. If you think you can succeed, you gotta go. Uh, and we did. We thought we could hit a really compelling price point. We looked at the set. We thought we could succeed in the set. So So we did that, right? But this all harkens back to your original points about price. Like, people talk so much about marketing efficiency and have a good product and hit on the right trends, and like, very rarely are people talking about price. And for most consumers in America, that's like a massive, massive variable. And but it's like not talked about that much. And you could have a great product and just simply price that's on trend and just simply price yourself out, right? If you have a 4 count of bars at Walmart that cost $10, like, it doesn't matter how good it is, like, you're going to lose. So that's just why it's like so important to dial in your supply chain and ops and manufacturing and fulfillment, because you literally just, like, it's not even possible to sell into Walmart or Costco or whatever. Um, so and then we had a similar thing with Costco, where we had this opportunity to do a roadshow with Costco, and we're like, can like let's evaluate this objectively. Do we think we can win there? We did a roadshow, which is like sampling on steroids. Did really well. Talked to 10,000 customers, and we're like, all right, based on all that, we think we can do well here, but we're gonna have to hit a killer price point, killer value. And we ran all the numbers, and we're like, we can hit it. Like, it's gonna be a tighter margin, no question, but we can hit it. And us, a couple of years prior, would not have been able to hit it. Like I said, we started at COGS of like 125 a bar. You know, I forget what our exact tally is now, but it's something in the low 50s. So, um, you know, that takes an insane amount of work. But like, you have to do that to even be able to hit the price point on the other end to even make an account work, let alone all the other stuff, right? Killer packaging, good product, on trend, right call out hierarchy, blah, blah, blah. None of that matters if you aren't hitting that price point.
Do you think almost like getting rejected from Whole Foods or and I'm really glad also you like bring this up because I talked to some founders who are building, really, really great, products that are, better for you, health and wellness focused. And I also hear from investors as well about how, who invest in some of these sorts of things being like, yeah, we want to make it like more accessible for, the average American. Since they invest mostly primarily in like domestic companies. And but when you look sometimes at the price point, like as you say, like you'll probably like for many brands, like you probably won't do you might do well in like Whole Foods, you might do well in the Bristol Farms of the world, but you might not do well in like the Walmarts, the Costco's. You might not be able to even get in just because your price points are too high, and that word like accessible, it's not really that actually like that accessible, even if you have a killer product.
I agree with that. I think there's a lot of people who I think see succeeding in natural as like, that's a viable company, and it is a viable company to a degree, but there just is a ceiling. Um, and the only way to truly build a giant brand is to go conventional. Like, that, there's no other path, right? So there's like a false positive there in some cases with like natural, or something works there. It's like, hold tight, hold tight. That's great, but like, you still have a big hurdle to get over here.
Do you think it was almost a blessing that you weren't able to get into Whole Foods because of that one ingredient, in that you had to kind of go the more conventional route and kind of maybe dial in more so your pricing? Or were you always thinking along those lines initially, we have to be, a lot more competitive with our pricing if we want to succeed in conventional rather than because I mean obviously you like went conventional off the bat, and so did that really kind of affect how you thought about pricing overall?
I don't know if it's like, I wonder. It'd be interesting to see an alternate universe where we did get in, and like, what happens to the trajectory of the brand. I I do think it would probably forced us to get smart quicker on COGS, price points, the mass market. Um, the other thing is too, we're an online first brand. Guess where else price matters a lot? Amazon. So like you can just look at any like big high demand category. So bars, let's say, you can just like if you're selling bars for $29.99, right? And you do nothing other than move that from $29.99 to $24.99, your volume and revenue just go up a lot. Um, there just are price points where you're shutting yourself off to large swaths of people because it's so easy to price shop. It's so easy to price compare. In store and on Amazon now. You know, Amazon is a digital version of a store shelf, and they're looking at A versus B versus. Um, and so we kind of cut our teeth on understanding the importance of price early from actually from Amazon. Uh, Less so on D2C, right? Because it's like, you know, there's no A/B comparison. And it's like, is the person gonna open two tabs and look at this and that website? No, probably not. But so I think you can get away with more premium pricing on D2C for sure. But if you want to go that Amazon route, you're gonna have to go through that same exercise of really dialing in price.
Yeah, I mean, especially too on the Amazon side, like if they don't know your brand and you're seeing, okay, maybe IQBAR has, maybe similar ingredients or similar like macros on the nutrition side, then maybe this other brand. Okay, well I haven't tried either of these brands, so how about I go with whichever brand's cheaper, since we haven't tried it. So you're kind of seeing those like comparisons if you haven't tried the brand. So
That's another thing actually is trial, right? So most people haven't tried your thing, and that's a big hurdle. So price matters for like ongoing purchase, but it really matters for trial because I just don't want to spend $100 on something and then hate it, and then now I have to throw away 9/10 of it. Like, so that's a that's like price pack architecture, like in general. It's not just your unit price, but also how do I create offerings that are low barrier to entry offerings. And by the way, that applies to online as well as brick and mortar. Um, so how do I create on Amazon a sub $10 item in this product line? Because I just know the trial for that is just going to be 5x what a $29.99 item is.
yeah, no, I mean, no, that's a great that's a great point. Kind of thinking through this on also, you have to price in terms of for like a sense of discovery, right? In terms of the people that actually haven't been able to try your bars online. Yeah, sure. Repeat purchases, probably they'll spend a little bit more because if it obviously if they love it. If they don't love it, then then they probably just won't purchase from you at all. And so that makes a lot of sense. I mean, in terms of pricing too, like how do you also think about um like retail pricing for your bars versus like your online pricing?
Yeah, I mean, man, when you're omni-channel, pricing gets really, really complicated really, really quickly, and retailers are very, uh, rightly so, emotional about that topic. So you got to make sure not to step on toes, and then Amazon just algorithmically is emotional, given that they'll shut your entire listing down if you're or they'll change your they'll take the buy box away from you, um, such that someone else, some third party seller, is selling your stuff if you're selling on some other platform at a lower price. So um, I don't know what else to say other than just you have to. Well, it's different context. So for bars, for example, you're not going to sell one bar online. Like there just is a minimum online because you're often pack it in a box, close the box, put tape on that, put a shipping label on that, incur shipping fees, blah 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 blah. So whereas if you're in Sprouts, you can sell one bar. So that like you can sell singles more obviously more easily in brick and mortar than online. So that's a big dynamic. But then, beyond that, general principle, general best practice is you don't really want to have the exact same thing online versus in brick and mortar, because probably in brick and mortar, you're going to have to sell that thing for cheaper just to be competitive in the set. Retailer is going to want you to, et cetera, et cetera. And so you don't really want to have that exact thing online, right? Because you're just cannibalizing sales there. So you want to be really thoughtful about like, well, okay, I have a 12 pack online and I have a 4-pack over here, and then I have an 18-pack over there. And to some degree, you kind of want to obfuscate things in consumers' minds a bit, right? You don't want the reality is you don't want everyone doing all the math everywhere and being like, that's exactly where I'm going to get it because that's the lowest price in the market. But even if they did, that's not a bad result because you're still getting that sale. But yeah, I mean, the general rule of thumb from ecom spanning into brick and mortar, and then intra brick and mortar, retailer A versus B versus C versus D, you don't want to have, you're going to be selling the same stuff, but you just ideally sell slightly different offerings, and then just know which retailers are EDLP retailers and it's going to be a lower price and which are going to be higher price, and that just shakes out how it's going to shake out.
Got it. So kind of having like multiple kind of like different offerings in terms of in terms of how big like the pack sizes and that sort of thing for like different retailers.
Yeah, and you know which retailers are benchmarking against which retailers, right? So like, in the club channel, different club players are looking at what you're selling at the other partner. Like we know, Whole Foods and Sprouts watch each other, and they're just like the dots are not hard to connect on where you want to be careful.
How much when you talk to retailer, how much I guess leverage do you have in terms of dictating that price to them?
Mm, you, it depends. It depends on the brand and the retailer. But I would even go as far as to say it doesn't matter because getting in the retailer is not the important variable, like selling once you're on the shelf is. So let's say you could even force them to take a higher price, and then like they're going to take their margin. So they're going to mark it up unless you get them to eat some of their margin, which is very hard to do and getting harder over time. They're going to pass that price on, and then you're just going to lose sales on the back end in terms of your retail price. So yeah, maybe you have a little more power here, a little more power there, a little more leverage to influence price to them, your wholesale price. But that's going to reflect a higher retail price. And can you win on shelf with that higher retail price? Maybe. Like if you're Prime or whatever, and there's just so much pent up demand because there's so many people who are Logan Paul fans and whatever. There's just a mania. Yeah, you can almost certainly charge more, and that's cool. But outside of special circumstances, you're going to lose a lot of business by doing that. So I would say like think through less around how do I get retailers to take higher prices and more so what is the ideal end price on shelf that will make me be successful?
I have one final question for you. What would you value more today? $100 of inventory, so $100 of COGS, or $100 cash?
Why? Because it's hard to get the inventory.
I would have thought inventory and the reason why is because then you can sell it if it's, if you have, let's say, 50% margin, then that inventory is actually worth $200 and that cash is still only worth $100.
Yes, but that's only true if it's hard to make more inventory, right? So I can turn that cash into inventory. I can't turn the inventory. So yes, in an ideal world, you can just sell as much inventory as you possibly make, right? Like everything you make is just flying out the door, right? But In 2021, I'd say inventory because it was like hard to convert. The question is how quickly and easily and efficiently can you convert that cash into inventory? And if I can convert it tomorrow, then I'll take cash because I have optionality, right? And also like freshness is important in food and bev. So it's like you're always playing that game of never go out of stock, have enough backstop, and then
Not had dead stock.
keep things fresh, right? Like you're not supposed to ship to UNFI with less than 75% of the shelf life left, right? So demand planning is really important, and you want to have like ideally something hitting a shelf was produced whatever 3 weeks ago. That's way better than that thing was produced 3-4 months ago. So that's what makes food and bev so freaking hard. You have to like bake that into it too, of getting the freshest stuff out there. But it's a good question. I'll think more on it. But I think cash.
Okay. Well, Will, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And there you have it. It was great chatting with Will. Will, thank you for coming on this show. This show, again, is produced by Manufactured. Manufactured is an online platform that helps brands with all things relating to inventory, whether it's inventory financing, sourcing, or manufacturing. We're across 20 industries and 25 countries. If you're interested in learning more, check out manufactured.com. Thank you.